What up, y'all? It's your boy Shake. It's been a minute since I posted anything, but considering this channel built a small audience around AEW Fight Forever, I had to bring you a comprehensive review of WWE 2K25 on Nintendo Switch 2. To be clear, this is not just a review of a wrestling game, but this is a review for the intersection of fans that are gamers and wrestling enthusiasts. This is for the folks that want to relive Macho Man vs. Steamboat, Bret vs. Mr. Perfect at SummerSlam, or CM Punk vs. John Cena. In order to properly talk about this game, we have to contextualize the relationship between wrestling gamers and Nintendo. We all know the debacle of 2K18 on the OG Switch. It was a rushed, unfinished, and obviously unpolished game that should have never seen the light of day. However, as Nintendo fans, our relationship with wrestling games don't begin there. During the N64 era, we lived in the glory days of the Aki games. WCW vs. NWO World Tour, which was followed by WCW Revenge. Then THQ got the WWF license and we got WrestleMania 2000, followed a year later by the Holy Grail, No Mercy. Even during the GameCube era, we got Quality Gems and Day of Reckoning 1 and 2, which in my humble opinion rivaled the SmackDown games on PS2 at the time. Even by today's standards, Day of Reckoning 2 is still visually impressive. But then WWE went multi-platform and we've been screwed ever since. In the summer of 2023, Nintendo fans had a small glimmer of hope when AEW Fight Forever released on Switch, but it was a buggy mess. While it was a fun romp, it didn't have nearly enough content to keep your attention for extended play. So Nintendo and wrestling fans have a long storied history that has seen its peaks in overly long, drawn-out valleys. That is, until now. To say I'm surprised would be an understatement. WWE 2K25 on Switch 2 isn't just a great port, it's also a redemption story for WWE games and 2K on Nintendo. From a visual perspective, you're getting almost all the bells and whistles that you do on current and last-gen consoles. In fact, with the inclusion of the Island on Switch 2, this gives it a leg up on the PC version and last-gen versions of the game. Listen, I'm no digital foundry, but what I can say is, to the naked eye, you'd be really hard-pressed to not think you're playing the game on a Series X or PS5. And again, by no means am I suggesting that Switch 2 is as powerful as those systems, but what I am saying is, this is a fantastic port that deserves your attention. You should not sleep on this version of the game. It runs incredibly smooth even when the ring is filled with 8 grapplers for an elimination chamber match. All the modes are here. Exhibition, which gives you a ton of different match types to choose from. There's the main story mode, My Rise, which was more enjoyable than it had any right being. The angle could have been pulled from the mind of Brian Gewirtz himself. You can either play Booker in either My GM or Universe mode, book rivalries, and build out the rosters however you see fit. It also includes the very controversial My Faction, the card collecting mode that many people loathe because they believe you have to pour money into it to get the most out of it. Again, it's all here. I want to take a moment to discuss My Faction. Yes, you can spend real-world money to buy packs and hedge your bets on getting that coveted Diamond Cody Road with gold badges. But as someone who spent a lot of time in the game mode in last year's edition, 2K has made some notable changes to how the game functions. For one, you actually don't need to spend real money for packs, as they added a World Tour mode that allows you to unlock some of the best Persona cards in the game. Also, we're still only midway into the mode season, and we still haven't seen a pink Diamond or Galaxy Opal card yet. This means don't waste money on the lower tier cards if you're going to invest time in the mode, because they'll essentially be obsolete in a couple of months outside of a live event reward you might want. At that point, you can just buy the specific cards from the card market to unlock whatever it is. With that said, you do need to play the mode if you're interested in filling out the roster for Persona cards like the Shield version of Seth Rollins or Jean-Paul Levesque, which is Triple H's original gimmick in WCW. The downside to my faction is the game's time of release on Switch 2. We're 4 months into the game's life, which means there's roughly 7 to 8 months left before 2K26 comes out during WrestleMania season. However, Switch 2 owners have missed the window for key live events that had Persona cards for Straight Edge Society CM Punk, Prototype John Cena, and American Alpha Chad Gable. The best we can hope for is that the devs create opportunities for Switch 2 players to unlock them. Getting back to the game's performance, one of the game's best features is also the least advertised and one no one is talking about. The game features Gameshare, and it is far and away the best implementation of Gameshare of any Switch 2 game, including Nintendo's own first-party titles. While I love Pauline and Donkey Kong Bonanza, playing as her isn't the ideal way to experience the game. However, WWE 2K25 lets you Gameshare to the original Switch locally and with other players online through Gamechat on Nintendo Switch 2. Whatever streaming technology they're using feels like magic, and the fact that my friends don't have to own the game but can play every single game mode is one of the game's biggest selling points. While I haven't tested it out, this means that if you're hosting a game chat with 7 people, you can literally have all of your friends join your Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, or War Games with only one person having to own the game. You can play every single mode online with friends through Gameshare, and it's absolutely brilliant. While Gameshare is a game changer, I have to address one of the game's biggest misgivings, which is the lack of an image uploader. While this might seem like a small thing, in the world of WWE 2K, it's a huge blow to the community. For the uninitiated, the Community Creations tab is a gateway to some of the most accurate and amazing creator wrestlers, custom arenas, and championship belts you could want. If you wanted a spot-on Kenny Omega or Chris Jericho to add to the roster, you'd be able to download them through the Community Creations. However, for some reason, 2K decided to omit the image uploader, which dramatically limits the depth of customization you can add to a creator wrestler. Even worse, cross-platform sharing on Switch 2 is also disabled. The WWE 2K community has some really amazing creators like Halloween, Sean Styles, and Dr. Gorilla Nuts, who create old-school wrestlers that look just as good as the in-game models. It's an odd omission that hurts the overall experience for people familiar with community creations. Another very odd thing is Nintendo Switch 2's HDR settings for the game. For some reason, when HDR is set to on or only compatible software, the game's colors are completely oversaturated and overblown. It looks like bloom lighting effects have vomited all over your screen. So warning, please take off HDR in the settings. I'm here to report that the game's AI can also still be janky, if not outright cheap in multi-person matches. On any difficulty, play a fatal 4-way and all the CPU opponents will focus on you in a way that isn't even logical. I've seen a CPU opponent pull off a finisher on another CPU, and instead of going for the pin and the win, they instantly focus on me. It can be incredibly cheap at harder difficulty settings, especially with some of the already uneven matches for my faction live events. For example, there's currently a live event to unlock the Diamond Mattel Jade Cargill Persona card, and you have to use a gold Bailey card. Because of the AI rubber banding, it makes these matches all the more frustrating because it's less about skill and more about bad programming. There's also glitches that seem to carry over year to year, like the animation for the stereo people's elbow with the Rock and Sock connection. When you pull it off, Rock suddenly warps outside or to the ring apron. WTF. Despite the things I mentioned working against the game, like its omission of an image uploader, cheap AI, and wonky HDR settings, what I love about this game is the breadth of the wrestling experience. You want to powerbomb someone through a burning table? You can do it. You want to play as Jacob Fatu and do a splash and destroy the Spanish announce table? You can do it. It harkens back to EA's old tagline, "It's in the game." As a wrestling fan, you can easily spend thousands of hours in universe mode alone. Another thing I truly appreciate is the attention to detail in all the Easter eggs littered throughout the game. For example, Rikishi's Stinkface is not a default move in his moveset, but it is in the game, and you can assign it to him. It even has a special zoomed-in camera angle when you trigger it. Earlier, I mentioned the Jean-Paul Levesque Persona card you can get in the World Tour mode. If you go to the roster menu and create a new team, you'll find that the announced name for the Blue Bloods is in the game, which means you can pair him with William Regal and create their mid-90s WCW tag team. It's a testament to the fact that the developers are wrestling fans too. If you bite the bullet on the season pass and have access to the upcoming Attitude Era DLC, I'm almost certain we'll get Persona cards for Triple H and Shawn Michaels and DX, and a full entrance template for the entire faction alongside the New Age Outlaws. I also think perceptive wrestling fans have already realized that with the inclusion of Mark Henry and D'Lo Brown, we're bound to get Nation of Domination Persona cards as well, since we already have that Era Rock and Farouk in the game. Speaking of rosters, another interesting thing of note is that WWE has released a lot of wrestlers since WrestleMania, including Braun Strowman, AOP, Indy Hartwell, and many others that made it into the game. So in some ways, 2K25's roster is one of the most robust in recent memory, and who knows if we'll ever get a legitimate way to play as them again. Wrapping things up, what we get in this Switch 2 package is an almost full feature set minus the image uploader, and in some regards the trade-off for Gameshare is worth it. WWE 2K25 on Switch 2 is a visual stunner that captures all of the nuance and mannerisms of your favorite over-the-top personalities inside the squared circle. The biggest additions to last year's game was an ambulance and casket match, and the novelty quickly wore off. 2K25 includes those match types, but more importantly, it seems to have perfected what 2K set out when they rebooted the franchise in 2022. The gameplay shines and the presentation is as close as you'll get to watching NXT, Raw, or SmackDown. You can play through the eras either as Bruno Sammartino, John Cena, or Cody Rhodes, and it's always an enjoyable ride. In the end, Nintendo fans can rejoice because we finally have a good wrestling game on our platform. 2K can rejoice because they've officially redeemed themselves from the traumatizing stinker that was WWE 2K18 on the original Switch. I'm starting to think it might be Yuke's fault though, because Fight Forever was playable, but wasn't much better on Switch. But if you're a wrestling fan and a Nintendo Switch 2 owner, I highly recommend the game. While everyone may be talking about Cyberpunk 2077 and Street Fighter 6 as the third-party showpieces for the console, you can now add WWE 2K25 to that coveted list. It's a great package that will take you all the way through the year until the next game is released. And yes, it has a hefty file size at 76 gigs, but what you're getting is as close to console parity in this one. I give the game a 9 out of 10. Not just as a wrestling game, but as one of the premier titles for the Nintendo Switch 2 that truly showcases what the console is capable of. WWE 2K25 on Switch 2 sets a high standard and benchmark that I hope EA and 2K continue to match and exceed with their upcoming sports releases. If you've enjoyed this review, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment. Yo, this is your boy Shake signing off for Wagglefest. Peace.